Hello. Okay. You know that the League does not support candidates for office, that they are nonpartisan. However, they are political. They support policies. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. The purpose tonight is to clarify the positions. And the Haas family will be giving both sides of each of the state ballot issues and the Loveland issues. Then we will pause, and those of you who want to stay and learn what the League's positions are, you're welcome to do so. But we try to separate ourselves from clarifying to clarifying to supporting. The way it'll work is that we will have each of our speakers talk about 4 of the ballot issues, and then we will take questions about those, and then we will go on to the next 4, okay? And we have some people on Zoom, so they will be asking questions as well, I hope. Since our presenters are new to most of us, they just came to Loveland in 2023, I thought I would introduce them as well. Both of them have been educators, of course. Both went to the University of Nebraska, but apparently that's in several different cities, so not the same one. And I gotta remember this. They are relatively new to Colorado, but they are not new to the League or to educating voters. Will Haas got his master's from the University of Nebraska. He was an educator himself for over a decade. Then he went into the insurance business. And when he retired, he was inspired by the history of the League and its work in voting rights. And he joined the League. We've become smart enough to bring in men. Joyce was also, both have graduate degrees from the University of Nebraska, and she was also a teacher for 18 years in kindergarten. They both moved to Palisade, Colorado, which was their taste of Colorado. Then they moved to Arizona, where she continued volunteering in elementary schools. And there in Arizona, Will served on the board of the League. And he was the president of the League in that area. And Joyce developed their first 411 website. So although they're new to Colorado relatively, like many of the rest of us, they came here in the middle of their lives and thought, I should come back here when I retire. A number of us did that. But they are not new to the League. They have been working on voter stuff for a long time, very effectively, in good positions. So I will give it over to them. And when there are questions, I will take this around and you can ask the questions.
Well, hi, everybody. I don't mean to interrupt, but you might want to know where the bathroom is. I'm Reverend Dana Lightsey. There's no running water in this particular building. So if you need to use the restroom, you can either walk around or you can go out the back door and go up the next set of stairs and go right in that first door and right in the door there, and the bathrooms are right there. There are 2 of them. There's plenty. Just wanted to make sure you knew that.
Thank you.
Okay. Fran, where'd you go? Oh, there you are.
No problem. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to explain kind of the order of our presentation a little bit, because if you haven't been to one of these before, it's a little difficult to follow. So we're going to begin our presentation with the local Loveland issues, because I feel like so many times we kind of leave those until the end and everybody's really tired and they're not listening too well. So we're going to start with the local, and then I have just one county issue that I'm going to talk about, and then we'll do the 14 state ballot issues. So there is a lot to cover. And if you get tired of sitting, please feel free to stand up, move around, use the restroom, whatever you want to do. You won't bother us. So just make yourselves comfortable. Yes. Okay. So starting with the local issues, we're going to be looking at those that are included in this folded brochure that I hope all of you have. If you don't, we have plenty more in the back. Okay. And I'll begin with ballot issue 2E. And by the way, not all of the ballot issues will come in the order that they're in the pamphlet for a reason. So ballot 2E, authorizing the City of Loveland to impose an additional 1% sales tax with the revenue generated by such tax to be used for municipal purposes. So historically, Loveland has had a 3% sales tax that was applied to food as well as non-food items. However, sales tax on food in Loveland was eliminated last year by a vote of the residents. This reduced the sales tax revenue to the city. Budget projections for 2025 predict a shortage of over $12 million needed to maintain the current level of services to city residents. This measure is asking voters to increase sales tax revenue by 1% on non-food items to prevent the loss of city services. Sales tax revenue goes into the general fund and provides funding for city departments such as Parks and Recreation, Fire, Police, Library, Cultural Services, Transportation, Economic Development, Community Partnership, and Public Works. The general fund also funds infrastructure projects, general government services, financial support services for nonprofits, and small businesses and residents in need. Loveland currently has a 3% sales tax rate and does not tax food for home consumption. This rate has been unchanged, other than the food tax, since 1984. The population of Loveland increased by over 50,000 between 1984 and 2024. Loveland has the third lowest property tax levy in northern Colorado. The per-person tax burden in Loveland is the lowest of any town in northern Colorado. The following are the sales tax rates for our neighboring communities. Fort Collins, 4.35% sales tax and 2.25% food tax. Greeley, 4.11% sales tax and 3.46% food tax. Longmont, 3.53% sales tax and 3.53% food tax. Berthoud, 4% sales tax, I could find no food tax for Berthoud. The fiscal impact of this 1% tax increase would go into effect on January 1st, 2025. 1 cent would be paid on every $1 transaction. Food for home consumption would continue to be exempt from sales tax. Budget projections indicate that the 4% total sales tax would allow the city to maintain its current level of services. Without the increased revenue, all service areas face budget cuts. Revenues are predicted to increase by up to $22 million in the first year. Passing the 1% sales tax increase would result in Loveland residents continuing to have a lower per-person tax burden than any neighboring town, except for Timnath and Wellington. Now, I realize you may have questions on this ballot issue, and that's fine, but if you would just jot it down, because I'm going to continue on with a few more, and then I'll ask for questions after the fourth one. And we'll keep doing that when Will presents as well. Ballot issue 2G, authorizing the City of Loveland to collect, retain, and spend excess revenues for police and fire, street construction and maintenance, and parks construction and maintenance. Article 10, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution, known as TABOR, requires voter approval for spending revenue above the limits established by TABOR. The current TABOR exemption will expire at the end of 2024. This measure would allow the city to collect, retain, and spend revenues in excess of TABOR limitations for a period of 12 years. These revenues would be used for police and fire, street construction and maintenance, and parks construction and maintenance. It does not create or impose any new tax or increase the rate of any existing tax. The TABOR override would begin January 1st, 2025, and end at midnight December 31st, 2036. The fiscal impact. Loveland voters have approved comparable TABOR overrides 4 times previously. These overrides have resulted in $51 million of services and amenities, including street rehab and construction, flood mitigation, parks and recreation improvements, and public safety measures. If ballot issue 2G does not pass, voters will continue to receive a yearly TABOR refund from the city. In 2025, the estimated total TABOR refund per Loveland taxpayer would be approximately $15.71. City of Loveland ballot issue 2F. Imposing an excise tax on the sales of retail marijuana and retail marijuana products sold within the city. If and when local governments approve the establishment of marijuana businesses within their communities, they typically incur some costs in processing business applications and fees, and in enforcing regulations. Rather than setting up high licensure fees, as some communities do to recover costs, Loveland has chosen to apply an excise tax, as some communities do. An excise tax is a tax in addition to sales tax and is usually paid by the merchant, with the cost incorporated into the price paid by the customer. Prescription drugs are exempt from sales tax in Colorado, and medical marijuana would also be exempt from the excise tax. The establishment of retail marijuana businesses within the city is contingent upon voter approval of this excise tax. A 5% excise tax will be applied to the price paid for retail marijuana and retail marijuana products. Medical marijuana is exempt from this tax. The city is authorized to collect as much as $5 million in 2025, and the amounts raised annually by the tax after that. The revenues can be used for any lawful municipal purpose, including, but not limited to, enforcement of marijuana regulations. If this measure does not pass, the operation of marijuana businesses will not be allowed in Loveland, and therefore no excise taxes will be collected. And that is the reason I'm keeping these two ballot issues together in my presentation, because one depends on the other. Ballot issue 2H, permitting a limited number of retail marijuana businesses in the city. The state of Colorado legalized the use of medical marijuana in 2000 and retail recreational marijuana in 2012, implemented in 2014, subject to regulation of cultivation, processing, testing, sales, and taxation. The state laws allow local governments to authorize or prohibit these activities locally. The issue has been presented to and rejected by Loveland voters in previous elections. It is on the ballot now due to an existing citizen petition requesting another vote this November. The establishment of retail marijuana businesses within the city is contingent on voter approval of the excise tax described in ballot issue 2F. Sales would only be allowed in licensed marijuana stores, which would be subject to regulations controlling licensing, fees, record keeping, the type of commercial zoning district, distance from schools, public areas, and residential neighborhoods, and other marijuana stores. The number of marijuana businesses allowed will be subject to municipal code ordinances. Passage is contingent on voter approval of ballot issue 2F, mandating a 5% excise tax. If the measure is defeated, medical and retail marijuana businesses will continue to be prohibited in the city of Loveland. Okay, and now we can take questions about those issues. And Fran will have a microphone and come around to see you if you would like to raise your hand and ask anything that you'd like about those. Yes. Oh, and by the way, since I have my husband here, I'm sure he will help us answer any questions that I can't.
Yes, I was wondering, food that is bought in a restaurant or in a, like McDonald's and taken home, that is not considered home.
Correct.
Okay.
That's a separate thing,
And so it does have the sales tax.
Right.
Is that correct? Okay,
Right.
great. Thank you.
Yes, regarding the 2E in this budget shortfall, I'm wondering where you got your figures and how are you accounting for the lack of sales tax that comes into the city from metropolitan districts and the 30% windfall property tax that the city brought in already?
You're right. Property tax has increased, and, that's just understood that it's a kind of a fluid situation with taxes. We don't know all the answers. But this was their best estimate coming from the city manager and the budget office of the city.
They were looking at all revenue when they decided that this was going to be a shortfall, and this was one pot that was gone. So that's what they were trying to get back to, is to get money from that part of their budget back in there. There was another question up here, Fran.
It's not a question, it's a comment. I recently retired after 44 years in the addictions field, and I can tell you that marijuana is less dangerous than alcohol, and in terms of highway safety, and marijuana is much less of a problem in human health than tobacco. So I know this isn't a question, but I'm lobbying, so.
Well, I'm trying to nip this in the bud. No lobbying on any of this. Okay.
But we appreciate your input.
I let you finish, but no, please, nobody take a position and try and convince anybody else.
At the end, when we pause, so we can give you the league positions, it'll be easier then for you to say what you want.
Did we have any questions from Zoom attendees? Okay, all right. I am going to go on with one county issue. That's the only one we have. And so then we'll talk about that one. Larimer County Transportation Sales Tax. Oh, and by the way, that one came to you in a white booklet. I'm not being able to put my hands on it right now, but came in the mail. Here it is. It's this one. And it has some of the other issues as well, but the one county ballot issue is in here if you want more depth. On September 3rd of this year, Larimer County Board of County of Commissioners approved placing a transportation sales tax measure on the ballot for voter consideration during the November general election. If approved, the measure would implement a 0.15% sales and use tax, meaning 15 cents on a $100 taxable purchase. Okay, so that's 15-point sales and use tax to be used for transportation improvements. The tax would be in effect for 15 years. Monies would be used for improving roads, bridges, intersections, pedestrian crossings, sidewalks, signage, lane improvements, and bicycle traffic improvements. Improving travel corridors between communities in Larimer County for safer and more efficient commuting, recreating, and delivery of goods and services. Supporting increased access to community transit services and other mobility options. This tax is expected to generate $22 million annually. The 15-year tax would fund approximately $330 million in projects, including local match for state and federal opportunities. The background on this, is that currently no sales taxes go toward maintaining or improving county roads. None. Larimer County maintains 767 miles of county roads and 101 miles of subdivision roads outside city limits. The average road maintenance cost over the past 10 years was approximately $22 million annually. Current funding to maintain county roads, including bridges, are the specific ownership tax or vehicle purchases and motor vehicle registrations, federal and state gas tax, and a small portion of property tax. So that's how they're getting their money now. Without further sources, only about 14% of the total need, or 38% of high and medium priority needs, could be funded. Northern Colorado is an integrated economy with 70% of residents routinely traveling outside their home community for employment, shopping, entertainment, education, and recreation. Larimer County's transportation needs exceed available funding. This 0.15% sales tax would satisfy the county's strategic objective for dedicated funding to improve road safety. And now I'll take questions on that issue if anyone has them.
Just to make sure it's really clear, if you were paid, let's say you were paying a sales tax of 3% to the county, I'm not sure what it is actually right now, it would change to 3.15. So instead of paying $3 on a $100 purchase, you'd pay $3.15 on a $100 purchase. Okay. Questions?
So now, if a store is in Larimer County and not in one of the cities, they are paying 3% right now. Is that correct?
I said if that were the tax. I'm not sure. Does anybody in here know what
Let's just say, for argument's sake, let's say it's 3%. Okay, so what we're doing is we're adding this 0.15% on top of that 3%. But now if you move that same store to Loveland, then does that 0.15% add on to the local Loveland tax too?
Right. It would be anybody who is a citizen of Larimer County will be paying that 0.15, 15 cents on $100.
I see. Okay. All right. I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
I just renewed my license plates here at Larimer County like a week ago, and at the very top, I got a bridge safety surcharge of $18, and at the bottom of this ticket, I've got a road safety surcharge of $23. What's the difference between a tax and a fee or a charge?
That's been an argument that's been going on for 30 years. I mean, yeah, there's been a lot of fees charged, changes over the years to avoid having to have a tax. It's just, that's the way it is.
I just looked up the sales tax for Larimer County. It's 2.22.
Thank you. All right.
So I have a question. So if we're paying this tax, it's to the Larimer County. If Loveland, I'm right here, sorry. If I'm a Loveland resident, that money's getting allocated across the county. So who is allocating that money, and how are people, the different towns vying for that money that we're paying taxes on?
That would be your Larimer County Commissioners.
So they're deciding which town is gonna, which road and which town is getting that money.
And they
then
prioritize them.
Right.
They have them rated by, high priority, medium priority, low priority.
and none of this is related to fixing up downtown Loveland, those roads.
No.
Is that even on their list?
No, because
completely
that's the
separate.
City of Loveland's job.
So we
all
have really
these
no say in where that,
entities.
where that goes in the county. It's just gonna go wherever they want it to
Well,
go.
the say that you have is how you vote for your county commissioners.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to move on to the, other ballot issues. The first is ballot question 2I, to amend section 8(1)A and section 8(1)E to reduce the number of votes required by the Loveland City Council to appoint or remove the city manager. Okay, just by way of background, currently the city charter says that there must be a 2/3 affirmative vote by the council to require to appoint or to remove the city manager of and the city attorney. Other actions of the council are 5 out of 9, meaning just the majority. The only other Colorado home rule municipality that requires a supermajority is Windsor. A yes vote is passed, the majority of the entire council rather than a supermajority would be necessary to change the city manager. That's pretty simple, okay? So I'll leave it at that. Ballot, well, yeah, there'll be questions at the end. Ballot question 2J amends the same way in regard to the city attorney. So this is like rinse and repeat amendment, but they had to have it separate, I guess, for some reason. So everything I said about the city manager also applies to the city attorney. And in this case, it would go to a simple majority as opposed to a 6 out of 9 or supermajority in order to hire or fire. So that's, I'm not going to explain it again because it's exactly the same thing, just a different person, okay, or different position. Okay, the next issue, the next ballot issue is question 5A, Thompson School District ballot issue. In order, well, wait a minute, I'm just going to skip some of the, we're not going to read everything, as you notice. We're going to skip around and so on. So we're just trying to get to the meat of things. Shall the Thompson School District R2J taxes be increased by a rate sufficient to generate up to $13 million in tax collection year 2025 with annual adjustments thereafter for inflation, with these revenues to be used for capital construction, new instructional technology, existing technology upgrades, and maintenance needs of the district, with it monitoring by a citizen oversight committee. In terms of background to this, this is a one-time, to fund one-time school district expenses such as construction, maintenance, the same things we talked about before, infrastructure needs. School districts can issue a bond or use the authority of the Colorado Debt-Free Schools Act to request an additional mill levy, special levy from voters to cover one-time expenses without borrowing money. So they're talking about, strictly speaking, this is for one-time expenses that they're requesting this. According to the Thompson School District website, the estimated yearly tax increase for a property valued at $500,000 is $118.44. That's the value, that's the valuation on the property, not necessarily what the market value is or whatever. You know that, I'm sure. Additional tax revenue will be monitored by a citizens oversight committee. Okay, those additional revenues. A yes vote would accept that additional levy, a no vote would reject it. And then ballot question 5B, the bond issue. Shall Thompson School District, R2J, debt be increased $220 million with a repayment cost not to exceed $395 million? Now, I'm going to just interject here. You know, when you buy a house, you pay the principal that you borrowed, but you also pay interest, right? Until the house is paid off. That's why there's two different numbers there. Okay, this is being paid out over quite a few years. Okay. This also will be monitored. It's expected to increase taxes not more than $32 million annually to pay such debt. And this will be monitored by a Citizens Oversight Committee also. Revenues for school bond can be used only for one-time expenses, just as the levy we were talking about, such as construction, maintenance, infrastructure needs. The proposed $220 million bond would fund high priority and some medium priority maintenance needs, growth needs, safety and security needs, partial air conditioning, and additional educational enhancement. High priority needs are those changes needed to comply with building codes. Medium priority needs are issues such as roofing or HVAC or heating and air conditioning that, if not corrected, soon will cause additional damage to schools. Population growth in Berthoud will require approximately 250 seats or 10 classrooms, which in the next 6 years. That would be paid for by additional construction and additions, et cetera, through several schools in the Berthoud district to make that room for those students available. Currently, 50% of and this is just by way of some of the expenses they're talking about. Safety and security needs will require improvements such as secure vestibules, and we know what that's about, danger to teachers and students. Radio application systems, amplification systems, and physical systems upgrades. Currently, 50% of the school buildings in Thompson School District do not have air conditioning. So expanding the Thompson career, this is another big issue too. They want to make a big expanse of the career campus, which would mean more access to career-related education, such as construction, skilled trades, geographical information systems, health sciences, cybersecurity, manufacturing and design for the students throughout the district. So this is to provide a lot more technical education. According to the website, the estimated yearly tax increase for a property valued at $500,000 is $101.04. Okay, are there any questions about any of those four issues ballots we just talked about?
I don't have a question, but I believe the reason why we have one ballot measure about the city attorney and the other one about the manager, I believe, is because in Colorado, to have ballot measures, they have to be single subject.
Yeah.
And so that's why you have the two. My other comment is about the special levy, which I believe is 5A. What that will do is free up money for the school district to be able to use that money, some of that money at least, for teacher salaries, that type of thing.
Right, and in order not to be spending all this from their regular budget, so that they would have room for other.
And that's because of the, what is it called, the act? You talked about that one, where they're getting, there's no interest on the money that they're getting, that they're using for that. So
Right.
that's helping to free it up.
If I remember correctly, the school district passed a bond issue in 2018 because they needed to put air conditioning in the schools. So do you know if the principal or even the interest has been paid off on those bonds already? They say they're not done, or they want more money?
I honestly could not tell you for sure. I think that's a question you'd have to call the school district and ask them if that bond's still going. If anybody in the room knows, they could tell me, but typically, they wait till one bond issue's done and then before they do another one, but I can't swear to that. So. Yeah, right. So they may have already done a lot of that, but they obviously haven't finished. If 50% still don't have it. Okay, we'll move on to the state issues now. State ballot.
Excuse me, sorry, up here real quick, up in the balcony.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. We do have one question on Zoom.
Oh, great.
They're just
Will?
asking, can you explain how our property taxes are dispersed? I know it seems a little broad, but
That's really beyond the scope of this presentation. We're dealing with the ballot issues. We're not going to go into all the finances of cities, counties, and state. Okay.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to go on with Amendment G, and this is a state amendment, modification to property tax exemption for veterans with a disability. This expands eligibility for the homestead exemption for veterans with a disability to include a veteran who does not have a service-connected disability rated as a 100% permanent disability, but does have an individual unemployment, boy, I can't say this tonight, unemployability status. Changes the state constitution, and so it requires 55% to pass, 55% of the vote. Background on this. Veterans may be eligible for this rating increase if they are either unemployed or unable to maintain substantially gainful employment as a result of their service-connected disability or disabilities. Substantially gainful employment is simply full-time employment that provides a wage greater than the poverty level, currently under $12,316. This would include about 3,400 Colorado veterans. The fiscal impact of this is that state spending would increase by $1.8 million in the state budget year of 2025-26, and similar amounts in future years to reimburse local governments for lost property tax collections under the measure. Local government spending would be unchanged due to the state reimbursement. Amendment H, judicial disciplinary procedures and confidentiality. Ask voters to amend the Constitution to change how disciplinary hearings for judges are handled. If it passes, this measure would create an independent judicial discipline board to conduct disciplinary hearings and hear appeals of informal remedial action orders from the Commission on Judicial Discipline. Background for this is that it is the result of recommendations by the Interim Committee on Judicial Discipline. The Interim Committee was formed as a result of allegations that surfaced in 2021 about judicial misconduct that was handled leniently or went unpunished. In the current system, the Supreme Court acts as the discipline adjudicator, is not bound to any transparency rules, and can keep proceedings from the public. The new system would have a 12-member body made up of 4 citizens, 4 district court judges, and 4 attorneys. One from each category is randomly selected to sit as the 3-person committee to hear discipline cases and make a decision on any potential punishment or to dismiss a case outright. Under the proposal, the Supreme Court acts only as an appellate body, deciding only issues brought up on appeal. It will not be able to dismiss a case or hide any decision from public view as it can now. And this amendment was placed on the ballot by the legislature and passes with a 55% vote. So if it passes, it removes Colorado judges from having direct influence and oversight over the discipline of their colleagues, creating an independent board made up of citizens, lawyers, and judges to conduct judicial misconduct hearings and impose disciplinary actions. It also allows for more information to be shared earlier with the public. If this amendment fails, a select panel of judges will continue to conduct judicial misconduct hearings and recommend disciplinary actions. Cases remain confidential unless public sanctions are recommended at the end of the process. Fiscal impact. The measure will increase state costs by about $50,000 per year. This funding provides compensation and training to members of the newly created board and rulemaking committee. Okay, I wanted to mention at this point, since this amendment was about judges, that there are also judicial retention questions on the ballot for you to answer. You may have noticed that already. And if you would please, when you get around to that portion of your ballot, please refer to the blue book. This is what I consider the blue book, pages 88 through 109, to get information about the performance of judges. Because obviously, most of us are not in close contact with judges, and it's hard to know how they're dealing with things unless we read an opinion like this. So please don't skip the judges. I know it's tempting to do that when you have so many other issues that you're dealing with, but judges are very important in our system. So please be informed and vote on those. Okay, Amendment I, constitutional bail exception for first-degree murder, placed on the ballot by the legislature, and it passes with a 55% vote. If it passes, it restores the ability of judges to deny bail to a person charged with first-degree murder when certain criteria are met. The judge must determine that that the proof is evident or there's a presumption of guilt, and it is great. It makes first-degree murder suspects ineligible for bail. If it fails, it requires judges to set bail for all persons charged with first-degree murder. Why is this on the ballot? It fixes an unintended consequence of Colorado's abolishment of the death penalty, which was done in 2020, as there is no longer an exception to the bail requirement for first-degree murder, and differing interpretations emerged on whether or not a judge must set bail in these cases. The Colorado legislators referred this to the voters to amend the Colorado Constitution to again allow judges to deny bail in first-degree murder cases when the proof is evident or the presumption is great that the person committed the crime. There's virtually no fiscal impact for this amendment, although it may increase workload somewhat, but first-degree murder cases are very loaded with work, so it's probably not going to make a huge difference. The Blue Book also defines first-degree murder, if you're interested in that definition, on page 20. Amendment J, repealing the definition of marriage in the Constitution, placed on the ballot by legislators, and a simple majority of voters is required to repeal a provision in the state constitution because it's taking out from the Constitution rather than adding in. If it passes, 9 years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court in 2015 legalized same-sex marriage across all 50 states. By passing this amendment, the state constitution's obsolete language will be eliminated and be in line with court rulings and the current federal law. If it fails, current language in the Colorado Constitution that defines a valid marriage as only a union between one man and one woman will remain. Why is it on the ballot? This amendment addresses the future possibility of the U.S. Supreme Court overturning its previous rulings and reverting the legality of same-sex marriage to each state. Leaving the current definition of marriage in the state's constitution may jeopardize the ability of same-sex Coloradans to marry. Fiscal impact, none. And questions at this point? Thank you. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. Okay. Oh, someone has a question. Yes, hi.
Thank you. The proposition with the veterans,
Yes.
the money, I have been told that the money would come from the education budget. Do you know if that's correct?
I have not read that anywhere. That just does not sound right, but I can't say that for sure.
Okay.
Kathy, do you? It doesn't sound right. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Okay, modifying the constitutional election deadlines, ballot issue K. This makes deadlines 1 week earlier for citizens to submit signatures for initiatives and referendum petitions, and for judges to file their declaration of intent to seek another term. Requires the content of the ballot measures to be published in local newspapers 30 days earlier than the current law. Okay, so here's what it deals with. Citizens now can collect signatures and file petitions to propose changes in state law initiatives and to challenge laws passed by the state legislature, referendum petitions. The deadline to submit is currently 3 months before the general election. Amendment K makes the deadline for citizens to file these petitions 1 week earlier. Okay. Intent for judges to seek terms. Judges currently are supposed to have that in 3 months before the general election. The new amendment changes the deadline to 3 months and 1 week. So the reasoning was to give more time to do the following part of the amendment, which is it gives nonpartisan staff of the state legislature more time to publish the title and text of all statewide ballot measures in newspapers around the state. Currently, the publication must occur at least 15 days before the election. The amendment makes the deadline 30 days earlier, so 45 days before. The amendment was issued in order to give them a little more time to do these things because they were putting under a lot of pressure to get them out a lot sooner. So Amendment K gives election officials more time to format, translate, and review ballots for accuracy before they're sent to voters. Ensures that newspapers publish the content of ballot measures sooner and before voters receive their ballots, which right now that's not necessarily the case. In terms of the fiscal impact, virtually not apparent. Because this amends the Constitution, again, it requires a 55% approval rating. Approval by voters, I should say. Okay. Amendment 79. The constitutional right to abortion. It makes abortion a constitutional right in Colorado and repeals the existing constitutional ban on state and local government funding for abortion services. It doesn't mandate any funding, but it removes the requirement that there not be any and that they're not allowed to do it if they want to. 79, issue 79, makes abortion a constitutional right in Colorado and prohibits state and local governments from denying, impeding, or discriminating against exercising that right. Amendment 79 also repeals an existing Colorado constitutional provision banning the use of public funds or abortion services. Kind of repeating myself there, but that's what the amendment does. If you vote no, it continues the ban on state and local funding for abortion and maintains the authority of state legislature to determine the legality of abortion in the state. I don't believe, again, there was, well, in this case, let's see, I don't know if I want to get into all that. Just briefly, I'll do this. I don't usually do arguments for or against, but one of the main argument against, for the amendment is the right of Colorado Constitution protects abortion access in Colorado to ensure abortion will be available in the state regardless of the changing political climate. It protects a person's autonomy over their reproductive choices. The argument against it is that placing the right of abortion on Colorado's Constitution limits the ability of lawmakers to pass policies preventing abortion later in pregnancies establishing parental notification laws, or creating safeguard if they are interpreted to impede a woman's right to abortion. So it's basically saying you can't do what you did before, I guess, in a way. Physical impact, it's not of any import with that ballot issue. Fiscal impact. All right. Constitutional right to school choice. 80, ballot issue 80. This is also to be placed in the Constitution and must pass by 55%. The amendment purports to create the right for parents to direct the education of their children and define school choice to include public, neighborhood, and charter schools, private schools, homeschools, open enrollment options, and future innovations in education. Again, I'm going to touch on the yes and the arguments for and against. A yes vote on the amendment creates a constitutional protection, a right to school choice. No vote in amendment maintains the current system of choice in the state law, of school choice in the state law. And for purposes of understanding, this is what the current law states. Students may attend any public school for free, even if they do not live in the school district. Public schools include neighborhood schools, charter schools, and some online schools. Each school district has policies allowing parents to enroll students in the public schools of their choice. State law also permits parents to choose non-public education options, such as private schools or home schools. Public schools receive public funding from local and state government. Private schools and home schools do not receive any public funding. So what they're saying is, okay, currently you have school choice. It's complete. What's not complete is that you want to have it in, the reason people want to put it in a constitution is to give them the possibility of getting the state to give funds to private schools and homeschool schooling and so on. So that's the distinction. There's even more background. I don't know if I want to get into it. I'll just mention briefly. Over the last several years, there's been several attempts to do vouchers or whatever for private schools and homeschooling and so on, and all of them have been hung up in the assembly in the state. And so I think the idea is, well, if it's in the Constitution, they won't have any right to hold us up or whatever. So that's up to you to judge whether that's something you want or not. All right. Retain additional sports betting tax revenue. When the issue was decided to allow sports betting in Colorado, it was thought that the revenue would never exceed $29 million. But so they decided to therefore say anything above $29 million in revenue will go to the state. Anything below that, will go to the state. Anything above that will have to be referred back to the casinos and the cities that were allowed to have betting. I used to know right where that was, and now I'm having trouble finding it. Okay, so what this ballot measure is saying is, all right, we're finding out that it is actually going past $29 million in revenue, and the ballot issues allows the state to keep and spend the revenue from existing sports betting, including revenue in excess of the $29 million approved by voters in 2019. It would keep the already voter-approved tax rate the same. It's still going to be 10% on all revenue from sports betting in Colorado. To date and in the future, it'll keep that rate at 10%. It would increase the funding for water conservation and protection projects. The legislature referred this proposed statutory change to the ballot with HB 24-1436. And when we're talking about fiscal impact, it's a fiscal impact to the state if this doesn't get approved. Right now, they're anticipating that for the budget year 2023-24, there would be a $0.9 million or $900,000, in other words, in excess of the 29 million. For budget year 24-25, it would be 1.2 million in excess that they anticipate. Budget year 25 to 26, they anticipate $2.5 million in excess revenue that would go either, if this passes, it will go to the state. If it doesn't pass, that money will go back to the entities, the sports betting operations, and to the towns and cities that are also granted this right. All right. But next ballot issue, I believe. Oh, this is, I've already gone through my 4 for now. So are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for hanging in there. This is a lot, I know. Proposition KK, firearms and ammunition excise tax, placed on the ballot by the legislature and passes with a majority vote. If it passes, it creates a new tax on firearms, firearm parts, and ammunition of 6.5%, and uses the revenue for crime victim services, mental health services for veterans and youth, and school safety programs. Firearm dealers, firearm manufacturers, and ammunition sellers are responsible for paying the new tax on their retail sales. The following are exempt: sellers with annual sales of less than $20,000, retail sales to law enforcement officers, law enforcement agencies, and active duty military members, along with private sales between individuals who are not firearm dealers, firearm manufacturers, or ammunition vendors. If it fails, the state's taxation of firearms and ammunition will not change. Currently, there is a federal excise tax on retail sales of firearms and ammunition by firearms and ammunition manufacturers and importers. In Colorado, retail sales are subject to state and local sales taxes that apply to most goods. No excise tax is currently levied by Colorado state or local governments. Current sources of funding for the programs in the measure are declining or will be unavailable in the future, and this is why it's on the ballot. The programs funded through the measure currently receive a combination of federal and state funds. Federal funding has been declining in recent years, and COVID-19 relief funds are no longer available. School safety programs have received allocations of state funds in the past. In Colorado, federal funding to support victims of domestic violence and other violent crimes has decreased by 50% since 2018. Currently, there is no state funding for victim services, and federal funding will continue to decrease in the future. The tax would be paid by gun dealers, gun manufacturers, and ammunition vendors who would likely add the cost onto their products. The Blue Book, page 34, describes what firearm products are subject to the new tax, and also the distribution of firearms and ammunition tax revenue. And that, oh, I'm sorry, that's on page 35 of the Blue Book.
For sellers, annual sales less than exemption.
I'm sorry.
Bottom of page 34, sellers with annual sales of less than $20,000 are exempt from the tax.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, Proposition 127 prohibit bobcat, lynx, and mountain lion hunting. Placed on the ballot by citizen initiative, passes with a majority vote. If it passes, it ends the hunting seasons for mountain lions and bobcats in Colorado and bars the state from ever allowing lynx hunting. Prohibits intentionally killing, wounding, pursuing, entrapping, or discharging a deadly weapon at bobcats, lynx, and mountain lions in Colorado. Establishes penalties for violations. It does allow certain scenarios for lawful killings. Big cats could be killed by state or federal employees as part of population management efforts, or with state permission by ranchers to prevent livestock deprivation. People who accidentally hit an animal with their car would not be penalized. Removes mountain lions from the definition of big game, making landowners ineligible for state reimbursement for any damage caused by a mountain lion. In the current law, they are not reimbursed for bobcat or lynx damage. If it fails, continue to allow the hunting of bobcats and mountain lions as currently regulated. Hunting lynx would remain illegal under state and federal law. Lynx were reintroduced into Colorado in 1999 and are still considered endangered by the state. Why is it on the ballot? Citizen initiative claims that populations can naturally regulate themselves and restricts the ability of the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission to issue licensing that is used to achieve the state's ecological objectives. While the measure uses the term trophy hunting, it bans all hunting, pursuing, or entrapping of bobcats, lynx, and mountain lions, regardless of the intent. Fiscal impact. In total, this measure increases state expenditures, decrease state revenue in result of the elimination and/or reduction of hunting license sales, decrease state expenditures as a result of a decrease in the game damage claims, increase revenue from fines or civil penalties may occur, and to cover legal fees to create new rules and regulations. So there's a little of both. There's additional information, quite a lot of it, in the Blue Book, beginning on page 40. Proposition 128, parole eligibility for crimes of violence, placed on the ballot by citizen initiative, passes with a majority vote. Increases the amount of prison time a person convicted of certain crimes of violence must serve to 85% before becoming eligible for discretionary parole or earned time reductions. Make a person convicted of a third crime of violence ineligible for discretionary parole or earned time reductions. Crimes include murder, sexual assault, aggravated robbery, and serious cases of assault, kidnapping, arson, and burglary. Impacts the parole eligibility of a person who is incarcerated for crimes committed on or after January 1st, 2025. If it fails, a person convicted of certain crimes of violence is required to serve 75% of their sentence in prison before being eligible for discretionary parole, minus earned time for progressing in personal, professional, or educational programs. This is the way it is now. Why it's on the ballot, a citizen initiative is to reduce crime and ensure justice is served, according to those who want it on the ballot. An estimated 220 individuals per year are sentenced to prison for crimes of violence and currently serve an average of about 23 years in prison, which will increase under this measure. Opponents claim that there's no evidence that the measure will reduce crime. There's also data showing a 9% decrease in violent crime rate in Colorado from 2023 fourth quarter to 2024 first quarter, which marks the lowest violent crime rate in the last 3 years. The fiscal impact increases state spending in 2 ways. In the short term, it requires a one-time computer system update in the Department of Corrections case management system, estimated at $12,000. Beginning in approximately 20 years, state spending will increase due to the measure's increase in the percentage of prison sentences that must be served. Actual costs will likely increase with inflation and depend on offender behavior and decisions by the State Board of Parole. According to data from the Department of Corrections, on average, about 449 offenders per year are sentenced for violent crimes, and on average, they serve 12 to 24 years in prison. Currently, it costs $56,972 per year to house an offender in a state-run prison, and $8,387 per year to supervise an offender on parole. Actual future costs are roughly estimated between 12 million and 28 million per year. There's more information on this on Blue Book page 44 and 45, speaking about the parole and how the discretionary form differs from mandatory. Proposition 129, establishing veterinary professional associates, placed on the ballot by citizen initiative, passes with a majority vote. If it passes, it creates a new mid-level regulated profession of veterinary associate between a vet technician who has a 2-year associate's degree and a veterinarian who has 8 or more years of education. This person would be called a veterinary professional associate, or VPA. VPAs would be people with master's degrees in veterinary care who could diagnose animals, perform routine surgeries, and order and perform tests and procedures under the supervision of a licensed veterinarian. If it fails, then only veterinarians and veterinary technicians and veterinary technician specialists would be allowed as regulated providers of veterinary care in Colorado. It's on the ballot because a citizen initiative is backed by animal welfare groups concerned about a shortage of affordable veterinary care, especially in rural or agricultural communities. It is opposed by veterinary professionals who warn the training requirements are insufficient for the level of care a VPA will be allowed to offer. The state board workload will increase to adopt rules, but spending is expected to be minimal. Once a population of VPAs exists, state spending will increase for oversight and enforcement, and state revenue will increase in equal amounts from registration fees charged to associates. This is also covered in the Blue Book on page 47 with a comparison chart of veterinary professions, current versus the proposed new ones. There is a coalition for the veterinary professional associates that is lobbying for and supporting creating a new mid-tier veterinary provider, saying that there is a national veterinary provider shortage affecting companion animals, the agricultural industry, and our food supply. Are there any questions about those?
Okay, we're down to the last two. Okay, funding for law enforcement. This would pass by a majority vote. Directs the state to spend $350 million to help recruit, train, and retain local law enforcement officers and provide an additional benefit for families of officers killed in the line of duty. A yes vote on this provides the $350 in funding to local law enforcement agencies to improve officer recruitment, retention, and requires the state to provide a one-time $1 million death benefit to the family of each state and local law enforcement officer killed in the line of duty. It would be limited to increasing annual pay, to providing one-time hiring, recruiting, and retention bonuses, hiring additional officers to address specific geographic locations or types of crime, provide ongoing training of new and veteran officers in areas such as the use of force, restraints, and physical fitness, and a one-time death benefit of $1 million. By way of background, currently, here's how things are in terms of benefits, death benefits, in terms of that $1 million additional payment. Currently, spouses and children of most law enforcement officers receive ongoing survivor benefits through the officer's pension. For example, the Fire and Police Pension Association pays beneficiaries at least 70% of a fallen officer's base salary when the officer is killed in the line of duty. Most local law enforcement officers in Colorado are members of the PFPA, which is what we were just talking about, the pension plan. But there are exceptions. Some local law enforcement agencies provide their own death benefit and disability benefits that are less extensive. State law enforcement officers are covered under the Public Employees Retirement Association. Proposition 130 creates a new one-time $1 million death benefit to families of all law enforcement officers killed while on duty, in addition to any death and disability benefits. fiscal impact. The state is required to provide this $350 million fund to do this, and they don't know for sure how many years that will take care of, but there is no revenue stream for this. So this is just going to be an additional expense in the budget that they have not provided any fiscal way of addressing. In other words, it's just the mandate without any source of revenue. So that would be the fiscal impact. I guess that's enough said on that one. And then on 131, the most fun of all, establishes an all-candidate primary and ranked choice voting in the general election. Okay, so this is easily said and more difficultly administered or whatever. But the measure, what it does is put in, well, I'll just read it the way it says here. It just requires a majority vote. Create all candidate primary election for certain state and federal offices. And if you look on page 52 of your blue booklet, it shows what offices those are at the bottom of that page. To advance into the general election, and allows voters to rank those candidates in the general election with votes counted over multiple rounds to determine who wins the election. Currently, we have a system, we have two-party system. They have a primary, they each carry out, and they choose their candidate. Other parties, besides the two major parties, can get on the ballot if they meet certain qualifications and have a candidate, they can get on the ballot as well. Anybody who is in one party or the other must vote in that party. Anybody who's an independent can choose to vote in either the major party or the minor party in the primary, but have no choice on these other things at that time. Okay, then if you'll turn to page 53, this is an illustration, and I'll try and work you through it. However, I must say there are YouTube examples of ranked choice voting that you can get on your own that might be more helpful than this. And I'm not going to go into this in great detail, although it is all spelled out here if you want to try and read it all and see how it goes. But basically it comes down to this. All the candidates that want to and qualify can qualify in the primary to be voted on. Of all those choices, let's say there are 10 of them, I don't know. 4 would be moved on to the general. It could be 2 members from one party and 1 member from no party at all, and another one from an independent, whatever. Whoever moves on, it's the top 4 vote getters, okay? All the others are eliminated in the primary. At that time, there will be a ballot available in the ordinary, or the main general election. I couldn't get the word. General election, there will be those 4 candidates, okay? However, you not only vote for the candidate of your choice, your first choice, but you vote for a second choice and a third choice and maybe even a 4th choice, okay? You have that on your ballot. It's frozen, it's there, okay? The top 3 candidates coming out of that, and that's where we're back to page 52, the illustration again. 54, was it? Yeah, 54. That's where, okay, we eliminate the last person of those 4. And that person's votes the ones who are voting for D, for example, in this case, the one with the lowest amount of votes, he's eliminated or she's eliminated, and their votes go to their second choice. So D's 7% went to A, and 6% went to, and so on, okay? So that's their second choice. Those votes are all recounted now with those people having their second choice added in there. If at that time we get 50% plus for any candidate, it's over. But if we don't, then it goes another step. The lowest one is eliminated again, C in this case. All right, C's second choices go to A and B, the remaining candidates, and D's that were already mixed in, their third choice goes because they've already lost their second choice. And well, no, I shouldn't say that. Their second choices that went to A and B will go on. They stay in. But the ones that went to C, they don't have a candidate anymore. Okay, so they have to go to a third choice in their list. If they don't have a third choice named, then too bad. They don't get to count. So then we have that. By that time, they're hoping for sure that somebody's going to get more than 50% of the vote. Okay? What's that? Oh my. So it's unlikely it would go beyond that. Now, for this amendment to go into effect, they have to try it out in some smaller elections throughout this different places in the state, at least 12 places before it would ever go into effect. And then there's a big caveat to that even. The state legislature now has said, well, I'm not so sure. even if we're going to go ahead with this, but we'll, if it gets voted in, we'll have a say about when it actually goes into effect. Am I pretty accurate about that or not? That's what I'm saying. Oh, that was what the state imposed. Okay, so that wasn't even in this actual amendment. Oh, okay. So there's some question, at least in my mind, if that's even right for them to interfere with an amendment that hasn't even been voted on. But that's what they're saying. Thank you for correcting me on that. So anyway, are there any questions? Yes. Move their votes. His percentage, and you split it between the next three. Based on who they had as a second choice, yes. Okay, now is that that stays there. By the percentage that the right, in other words, yes. The number of votes in D that voted for A as their second choice go to A. The number that voted for B as their second choice go to B, and so on. Yes. Do we know if there's software that will deal with it? Yeah, there would have to be software. Oh, go ahead. Manually done. It's being done. It was just voted in Fort Collins and it has already happened in Boulder. Okay, and there are a couple smaller that have not yet done. Whether they're continuing it or not. But those have been going on for a few years. Small. Right. And I'm guessing too, when I was saying there would be software, yeah, that's in terms of the ballots. Software would have to be changed in how the ballots are set up and all that. Yes? Is this Colorado original or? No, there is ranked choice voting in Alaska, Maine, and the third one, Hawaii right now. And one of them, I think Alaska is deciding in a ballot issue whether they're going to keep it or not, okay? There is a fiscal impact on this, and it would be fairly extensive. I think we're getting kind of guesswork on that as far as how much the actual impact would be. But face it, it would require more expense in terms of carrying it out that way. The question is it worth it for people to have a better choice in terms of, getting, if they don't get their first person, at least having a chance on getting their second or third if it comes to that. They're saying what the experience they have found is it tends to eliminate everything being extreme. You've either got this person in this party or that person in that party, and the ones who get in from the primary are usually the most extreme, partisan types that get into the general election. People don't like that. The ranked choice voting was designed to deal with that. Among other things, hopefully these kind of things, if people really buy into the idea, these kind of things would tend to make a more centralized thinking in terms of the candidates that get in. They're more centrist that appeal to a lot more people. That's the idea, I guess. Yes? Just as they have it now. I don't know that gets rid of it. I'm proud of being on collecting initiative petitions that we finally got through in Arizona to outlaw dark money in Arizona. Maybe it'll happen here too someday. Any other questions? God, I thank you for saving me on that correction. Any other questions? Okay, just another couple of things we want to say. First of all, those little blue booklets you got, remember, that's a great thing. Once you have made your final decision on those ballot issues, if you're going to do it at the kitchen table, you've got it all ready. You don't have to go nuts again, going through all the amendments again. If you've already made a decision, by the time you sit down to do your ballot and you marked it in the little book, you can just go through that quickly then, okay? And then secondly, with regard to the league, we can give you a quick list, those of you that want to stay for another couple minutes. Right. Oh, yes, at your own risk.
On this little card that's included, oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, get that one. Right there.
Okay.
Just sit.
The little card that's included in the blue insert has on it a QR code. You can scan that and find out where the league stands on each
Right.
issue.
But I'll give you something right now if you want it. Okay.
And also, you can go to vote411.org that is done by the league to get information about candidates. And the candidates have answered questions themselves. They're not interpreted by the league at all. They're just strictly asked and answered by the candidates. So it's a
gives you
great way to
yeah,
find out about those
their
people.
views on what they stand for. Okay. If you want to mark the ones that the league opposes, there are only two, 80 and 130. If you want to mark the ones that the league takes no stance on, they are I, 127, 128, and 129. All the rest, the league supports a yes vote on. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
You're right. The league has long-standing positions. We have been in business for, 104 years, going on 105. We have positions on all sorts of issues. They have been studied, and they have been voted on by the league members. If we don't have a position, then we don't have a stance on one of the issues. So we have 4 this time on the state, with the state ballot measures, that we don't have a position to go on, to back us up by what our decisions are. So
And then
that's what
the
those are.
stance we take on these issues is based on the position we have taken in general.
Right.
Okay. Any other thing anybody wants to say? Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. We really appreciate your attention.
Oh, and by the way, if you don't have one of these anymore, if you lost it or whatever, the library has some extra ones if you need to get one again. Oh, I almost did it again. I almost stepped off again.